I cannot believe how good this came out. Good morning. So today we are going thrifting. I set aside the whole day because I really need to find us a dining room table. So the dining table that we've been using for years, we actually found in a barn. Like legitimately a barn. It was in a house that was getting demoed and we were kind of running through it trying to save whatever we could. We found that table and we needed one anyway, so we just took it with us and it served us well. After a few years, the legs literally started to disintegrate. So we Frankensteined it together by taking some legs off of another sort of random falling apart table that we had and put those legs onto this table. It's a real Frankenstein's monster. On top of that, it is not nearly big enough for our dining room. It looks completely lost in the space. The table we have now is about 5 feet long, which maybe sounds like a lot, but it's really not. We probably need at least a 7-foot table for it to feel right, you know? We could even go up to like almost 8 feet long. It just creates that weird perspective when you have a table that's just not the right size for the room. Typically when I go thrifting, I try not to go with like specific things in mind because you never know what you'll find. You can't count on finding anything, but here we are. I would love something that has either French turn legs or more of a shaker style leg too would be totally fine. And obviously solid wood. We will see what we find and we may adjust. Without further ado, it is time to go thrifting. We did it. We actually found a table after like 7 thrift stores. I was truly thinking I was not going to find one, was basically resigned to like, today's a bust, and here we are, we finally found one. Okay, so I got back kind of later yesterday. It was already dark and rainy, so I got my table. So excited. I am so excited. But it is stuck in my car currently. Just the tabletop is way too much weight for me to even, I can't even kind of yank it out. You know what I mean? But I think today, since I was able to pull the legs out and the leaves out, I'm actually going to try to work on those. Then I can at least get a sense of how it's going to strip down and maybe get a better plan for what I'm doing exactly. Hello from the future. So that project did not go as planned. Not only did my husband end up having to travel for longer than he was planning, but when he got back, he got sick, and then I got sick. While I was sick, Frank was able to do some alterations on the table for me. When I saw the table in the thrift store, I knew that I definitely wanted to change the apron on it. It had a very scalloped apron, which is a very classic 80s style, but just not the vibe I was going for. We ended up taking apart the entire table so that he could trim the apron to be just a straight cut. While he was doing that, he also offered to trim the top of the table for me. One of the things that I didn't love about the table was that the top edge was super curved. I thought I was going to have to live with it as is, and I was fine with that. But then Frank offered to run that through the table saw and make it a straight edge. Once I felt better and it was finally a nice day, it was time to strip down the table. But that day, the next day, it was going to rain and be freezing, so I kind of had to get it all done all at once. I used my orbital sander as well as the little detail sander that I had just picked up the other day, which I don't know how I lived my life without it. It is now like one of my favorite little tools. But I used those two. I started with a pretty rough sandpaper and worked my way up to something finer. I think I ended at like a 220. I didn't want it crazy smooth, but I also didn't want to get splinters while eating dinner. Once the top was sanded down, I noticed that the legs no longer quite matched. Since the legs were rather difficult to sand down, they definitely were not perfect by any means. So when I went to test stain and sealer on them, as soon as I put it on, it really lit up those imperfections like a neon sign. First, I tested out bleaching them with oxalic acid. I've used it before and it can work great, but it just was not giving me the finish I was looking for on the legs. So I did some searching and I came across a great YouTube. I'm gonna link her down below. She also went through quite an ordeal making over a dining room table as well. She had problems with her tabletop not matching her legs, but she ended up using a paint wash to sort of match the two. I've actually never done a paint wash on wood, which is shocking, but I thought I'd give it a go. Digging around in my basement, I found the paint that I used for this very room. I thought it might be a good option to lighten the legs while also adding just a tiny bit of warmth to them. For the paint wash, I ended up doing about a 50-50 mixture of paint and water. Working in small sections, I would paint on the mixture and then very quickly wipe it off with a cloth rag. That way it left just a shadow of paint. It didn't cover up any wood grain or anything beautiful about the legs. It just kind of evened out the tone. I will say that I think I went just a little bit heavy on paint in this mixture, but I was happy enough with them, so I decided to move on. So I started sealing the table. However, after 2 coats of sealer, I realized that the sealer was really bringing out the orange undertones on the tabletop. And orange was not the vibe. I ended up sanding out the sealer that I just put on, and I decided to do a very light paint wash on the top. Using the same paint, I did a mixture that was probably 1 part paint and like 6 parts water. It was very watered down. I definitely did not want to cover up anything on the tabletop that I didn't have to, so I went really light with it. I ended up doing 2 coats of that, the same method I did before, painting it on in small batches and then wiping it right off. And it worked out perfect. It shifted the tone of the table enough so that it was no longer showing a lot of oranges, but it didn't cover up any of the detail of the table. So I once again sealed the table. I used a water-based polyacrylic sealer in a matte finish. I would say in the future, if I need to reseal it or I'm sealing something again, I would go with a completely super flat finish instead of the matte. I'm not a big fan of super glossy finishes. To me, it just looks more new in that case, and I could have just gone to West Elm and bought a brand new table if that's what I wanted. But we are officially done. I am so happy with how it came out. It's also so exciting to finally have a table that fills out this space. I've always felt like our dining room just did not get the love it deserved, and it always just looked a little bit empty and a little bit sad, but now it fills out the space lovely. We also still have an extra leaf for the table, so when we have big parties and people over, I can make it super, super long, which is exciting. I remember one time I had book club over and we did not fit at the table, but now I can fit everybody and their mom at my table. I'm gonna wrap it up, but thank you so much for watching. I'm really excited to start sharing some long form videos here. I have loved connecting with a lot of people over on TikTok. However, there's definitely limits to how much you can share and only top out at 3 minutes. So I'm excited to share some more behind the scenes full tutorials here. If you enjoyed this video and you would like to see more sort of renovation, room makeovers, DIYs, and of course thrifting, then please consider subscribing. It would mean the world to me. Thank you again for watching. I will see you next time. I only had one nice day. I got to stripping. Whoa. Oxalic acid? Is that right?